Neighborhood Council Homeless Liaison Lori Jacobs.
Thank you, Shannon. Good afternoon, candidates. I'm honored to be here. My question's a little shorter, but equally important. In the long term, housing is a huge solution to homelessness, not shelter. While interim options can be incredibly valuable, the lack of affordable, accessible housing options is the main problem. What immediate and new steps will you take to increase the availability of low-rent housing across the city of Los Angeles?
Thank you so much, Lori. Okay, we are going to start with Councilmember De Leon.
Thank you very much, Lori, for that very important question. It's the biggest humanitarian, crisis of our lifetimes today. Listen, I know what housing insecurity feels like because I've been housing insecure for a great portion of my life. I know what it feels like to be homeless because I experienced homelessness in my early 20s when I slept on friends' couches, when I slept in my car, as well as on the office that I worked at for 2 years, that nonprofit organization. So I know what it feels like. This is the biggest humanitarian crisis, again, in our lifetimes. The issue to deal with, and you're right, we have short-term interim housing, whether it's tiny homes, whether it's room key, home key specifically, to get them off the streets now so they don't die on the streets. But what is the long-term solution to put that roof over the head? Whether it's permanent supportive housing with the wraparound services, or perhaps folks who are experiencing homelessness who may not need as intensive type of services, but they need access through master leasing through an apartment, or adaptive reuse, purchasing a building outright and converting it into permanent housing, just like what I've done in 2 hotels in El Sereno. The issue with LA is that we have a housing affordability crisis, not a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis because we have 70,000 vacancies right now in the city of LA. We have 70,000 vacancies. Any of you can go out there and rent an apartment right now if you can afford it. If you can afford it. And the vast majority of Evangelinos cannot afford it. We have all those vacancies. Our arena goals are 450,000 specifically. Roughly about half of it has to be affordable housing for everyday Angelinos to be able to afford to live in the city that they work in, the city that they grew up in, the city that they love. Bottom line, you gotta mandate inclusionary housing. Because if you don't mandate very low income, and middle income, the free market does not correct the inequities that exist today. For the past decade, I've just been on the council for 1 year and a few months, and I can't understand why there was no inclusionary that was included in terms of mandating, because the free market does not correct the inequities that exist today.
Okay, council member, thank you so much. Sorry to cut you off. Trying to keep our time.
No problem, Shannon.
Okay, Councilmember Joe Buscano, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you guys are here actually in San Pedro, which is a proven model on what to do on housing. We well know that we have a supply issue. And within this radius, I would say about a mile and a half, you're gonna see actually action. Proven leadership. We said yes to housing at all income levels. You'll see up the street, on 6th Street, supportive housing, affordable housing. On 9th Street, you got workforce housing being built right now. On 5th Street, you also have affordable housing. Down the street here, we just broke ground with Janice at the courthouse property. Market rate housing, 20% set aside for affordable. You also down Holland Partners right down the street. You have housing at all income levels. And Rancho San Pedro, we are on the way to do what we've done in Watts at the Jordan Downs, doubling the footprint, bringing in market rate housing as well as affordable workforce and public housing all on one site without displacing a single soul. Again, this is what needs to be done citywide. When I first got here, we updated the San Pedro, as you know, Lori, we updated the San Pedro Community Plan. That is a way forward. Now, these are now by right projects that I just spoke about. That's not gonna be stuck in litigation. Lastly, as mayor, immediately, I'm gonna put all the decision makers under one room, under one department, create a development services department that have building and safety, planning, the fire department, as well as engineering, all under one department so we can fast track and streamline these projects. Because like Kevin said, we need 500,000 units that need to be built by 2028 or 2029. And that's the way forward. Again, base your decisions on who you're gonna elect as mayor on what we have done, and we're proud of the leadership that we've displayed. We need these, update the community safety community plans, throughout the city and have the resources quickly to move on these updates.
Thank you, council member. Okay, Congressmember Bass, thank you.
Thank you for the question, and I do believe it is the most important issue facing our city, and I also agree with my colleagues. I don't know that any of us have any magic bullet or one size fits all. We have to do all of the above. And so I would declare a state of emergency locally, but that's not good enough. We also need a state of emergency nationally because we need federal resources to come in to help as well. We have vacancies around that we need to fill. We also have problems with regulations with vouchers. There's so many rules and regulations because until now, this issue had been viewed as an issue that we can chip away with a bit and a bit. We have a crisis in our city. We can't just do things business as usual, and we can't allow the rules and regulations of the past continue to block us from today. So I know that we have vacancies. We have vacancies for veterans, and they can't seem to get them in the housing because they can't fill out the paperwork. But one thing that I want to bring to the table that I also sure my colleagues will agree with, we have to address the reason why people are unhoused. And it's not a monolith. People are unhoused for a variety of reasons. Some are unhoused for economic reasons. There's former foster youth that we kicked to the curb when they turn 18. There are people who were formerly incarcerated because when we essentially pass mass incarceration, we also pass laws that continue to punish people once they get out. So they leave prison and go to a tent because they can't get a job, they don't have a place to live, etc. And then there are people with health conditions, chronic disease, substance abuse, mental health. Unfortunately, we dismantled our substance abuse system that we had in the 90s that needs to be expanded again. Now you can only get residential treatment for 30 days. You used to be able to get residential treatment for an entire year. We dismantled the mental health system, we all know that, and we've never addressed it. And what I am hoping, because we've had so many tragedies, I'm hoping that we can finally revamp our mental health system. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressmember. Okay. City Attorney Mike Fiore.
Thanks. Lori, I really value your leadership on homelessness. I think your question was about affordable housing in particular. Let me dive in. So first, as the mayor, I'm going to say there are 10 general managers who touch the siting and approval of affordable housing. I'm going to say if you want to keep your jobs, you're going to reduce the time it takes to site and approve it. Next, we have a program called our Transit-Oriented Communities Program that's designed to incentivize putting multi-story buildings, mixed use, on transit corridors. It's a good program. It needs to be expanded. I'm going to expand it to make it easier to build those projects and faster to build those projects. Next, the pandemic exposed a number of buildings throughout our region, especially in downtown, where tenancies aren't going to exist anymore because businesses have left because of telecommuting and so on. I want to put the adaptive reuse model, which I spearheaded as a city council member, on steroids because we need to be taking those empty, vacant commercial units and making them into affordable housing. Next, we have school sites that have been underutilized because we've had a dramatic diminution in LAUSD enrollment. We should be co-locating affordable housing on school sites. The land is free. We have teachers who can't afford to live anywhere near where they work and kids experiencing homelessness with no place to go. Next, we have a whole bunch of outdated rules. I want to be very specific about an example of how I will change one. For example, we have in New York and in San Francisco and now in West Hollywood a model where individual tenants live within a unit. They have a bedroom and a bathroom and everyone shares a common area. We should be able to do that here in Los Angeles. Much less expensive for individuals to rent those units off of that common area. The rules don't allow for that now. That should change. Next, we need to be preserving the affordable housing we have. We have existing buildings. The Housing Authority, I was just talking to the Housing Authority General Manager the other day. The Housing Authority can be purchasing more such buildings, and then when a tenant leaves, as opposed to having the rent escalate to what the market would bear, they can keep that rent at an affordable level. And tenants require protections too. I spearheaded a right to counsel for tenants throughout the state. I want to spearhead that here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you very much. And I just want to mention we need all 15 council districts to be working together, not competing for housing. Homelessness has no borders. Thank you.